If you turn to YouTube to look for advice when it comes to credit cards and how to build up the best setup so you can elevate your life with points and miles, you're going to hear a lot of advice and kind of what we would call accepted wisdom in the space. In other words, things that most creators say that it seems like everybody agrees on. And some of these things I agree with, and some of these things, frankly, I don't think apply to everybody. Because the one-size-fits-all approach to points and miles and building out a setup just doesn't work. A lot of people have different circumstances. Some people spend $1 million a year on their credit cards, and some people spend $20,000 a year on their credit cards. Their setup is going to look totally different from one another. Some people travel a lot for work. They're road warriors. They're going to get points in a very different way, and they're going to care about statuses very differently than someone who takes 2 or 3 trips a year. Some people travel just by themselves, or they travel with maybe just one companion, a spouse, or a significant other. Other people are taking 3 kids on vacation when they go. They have very, very different needs. So what I want to talk about in this video is some of the conventional wisdom in the credit card world that is very, very true. And I want to make that very clear. This conventional wisdom is so true for some people, but it's not necessarily true for all people. Now, I'm going to give a trigger warning right here at the beginning, because for some people, some of these opinions are going to be over the top. And it seems like some of these type of videos that I do get the most hate and the most kind of aggressive responses. And that's okay. We're all entitled to our opinion. And like I said, the conventional wisdom does apply to a lot of people. But what I'm going to share are some things that I think are just absolute truths that sometimes aren't overly communicated in the points and miles community and in the credit card space. So if you would, please hit the like and subscribe button and let me tell you all about it. Now, the first truth that often isn't well communicated, at least in my observation, is that you have to have a degree of self-discipline to kill it in this game. I mean, people are always talking about, well, you can kill it in points and miles. Doesn't matter if you have high spend or low spend. Doesn't matter if you travel a lot or travel just a few times a year. You can kill it. And that's the terminology that's often used. And what they're meaning is you can do really well. Now, I'll agree. Everyone can benefit from the points and miles sphere if you just apply a little bit of strategy. And it doesn't matter if you spend a lot or spend a little, travel a bunch of people or travel a few people. Everybody can benefit. In other words, they can do better than they were doing before. But if you really want to do very, very well with points and miles, it requires, unequivocally, without any shadow of a doubt, it requires that you have a high degree of self-discipline. I mean, we talk about, and they're recommended all the time, these cards that have high annual fee, but give you back all these credits. Yes, they can, and they can be extremely lucrative, but you've got to get the credits back. So you've got to have self-discipline to keep track of all that stuff. So if ever it's being presented or you're getting the idea, well, this is easy, it's not necessarily easy. You've got to discipline yourself to make it happen if you want to really maximize and do the best that you possibly can in the points and miles world. The second thing kind of goes along with that, and that is it requires hard work. It's not just simple. It's not just you just set it and forget it. Now, you can run a one-card setup and just use that everywhere, yes, but you're not going to do super well in regard to points and miles, or at least not as good as you could have done if you do that. So what you trade off is if you want simple and if you want easy versus hard, difficult, and requiring a lot of time, that's a trade-off. You are not going to get as many points and miles, and you are not going to get as good a redemptions and cent per point value. It's just a fact. You've got to work at it if you want to absolutely maximize and do the very best that you can. It requires hard work. It's not just set it and forget it. It's not just easy. Now, the next one, and this is going to be a hot take, but a lot of people talk about lounge access. And I go to a lot of lounges. We went to 104 lounges last year and over 100 lounges the year before. We go to a lot of lounges. We love them. We care about them. But I can tell you from a person who's been to all of the lounges and currently has access, I think, to every lounge available in the United States, I'm telling you that some of the lounge access that's being promoted for normal people, for regular folks who are especially just traveling a few times a year, is not necessarily everything it's cracked up to be. What I mean by that is, yes, the American Express Platinum Card gives the most lounge access, but it doesn't give access to the easiest lounges to access and to make sure that you don't have to wait in a line. Also, it doesn't give a lot of guest access. In fact, it does for Priority Pass, but it doesn't for Amex Centurion Lounges and Delta Sky Clubs. So here you're getting this card, and I've got all this access, but you can't bring anybody with you unless you pay a big fee to bring in a guest. That doesn't work. So here's my take. I think that airline-specific lounges for the average traveler is a way better situation than some of these others. Unless you're flying out of an airport, maybe, let's say you're in DFW and you have Capital One. Well, then you can use that every single time. But for a lot of folks who are flying out of airports that don't have a lot of lounges, and you're flying and making layovers on the way to your destination, I mean, some of those other lounges are not as convenient as a Delta, as an American, or as a United lounge, because those lounges are usually in the same terminal that you are flying through. So there's one close to your gate. You can get in quick, get out, and there's hardly ever a line. Now, with Delta on occasion there is, but especially with American United, I've never waited in line, never. And so you can get in, and the cards that give you access to those give you guest access, except for Delta. But with the other two, American and United, you get access to guests. So, I mean, which is more important? Having more access to more lounges, or having access that's easy to use and you don't have to switch a terminal, go 30 minutes to a different terminal and 30 minutes back and have a super long layover, and you can bring guests in? Well, I actually think the best lounges for the vast majority of people are probably the airport-specific lounges. The other thing that's just a truth, and this is just a fact, and it doesn't mean that people that don't have this can't do well. They can do well, but higher spend gives more opportunity. So a person who has a lot of spend, say spends $100,000 a year on their credit cards, is going to rack up a lot more points than somebody who has much less spend. And I'm not saying I necessarily am happy about that, but it is a truth. It is a fact. So some of the things that people tout and communicate that they're able to do is because either they're getting a lot of referral bonuses, or they have, the ability to spend a lot of money through some of the shopping portals to get a lot of points, or they're just able to do more sign-up bonuses because they have more spend, or more lucrative sign-up bonuses. Some of the American Express business cards, you can get massive. I mean, some of them give 300,000 points, but you got to spend $20,000 in 3 months. People who can do that are just going to rack up a lot more points. They're going to rack up millions of points, some of them, in a year. And someone who has lower spend just will not be able to do that. Now, that doesn't mean with hard work and being a good strategist in regard to your planning that you can't rack up significant points and take great trips. You can. But don't look at one person and say, look what they're doing with that, and I can do the same thing, because your spend may not allow it. Your spend may not give you the ability to rack up quite as many points. And that's something that's often not stated. Is some of these folks who are traveling all over the world, 8 business class trips per year and staying in the finest hotels everywhere, some of those folks are putting a lot of money through their card, or they have the ability to put a lot of money through shopping portals or whatever it may be. So that's just a reality that has to be acknowledged. The next thing is that multipliers, we always talk about multipliers when we're promoting a card, right? So here's this card and here's its multipliers. Well, that matters a lot on transferable currency cards, but if you have transferable currency cards, there is a reason to have an airline or a hotel card. But the truth is that most of the time, the points accumulation through multipliers on hotel and airline cards are utterly meaningless. It doesn't matter, because they're so low or the points are so lacking in value that it makes no significant difference. For instance, I have a number of airline cards. I don't spend on those airline cards unless I'm chasing status or some kind of unique objective like that. But I don't spend on those cards because I can use the transferable currency card to transfer over to the airline and get a way, way, way better deal. That's true with hotels. Sometimes hotels, they say, wow, this card, it can get 26x at the hotel, or it can get 5x on everything. The problem is that 5x are in points that aren't worth very much, sometimes half a cent per point. So you'd be better off getting 2x on a transferable card that you could move over to the hotel or whatever it may be. So this is just something that's not often discussed, and so I try to de-emphasize when I'm talking about airline and hotel specific cards that the multipliers are almost a meaningless thing to discuss because it's generally not a smart idea to put a lot of spend on those cards. And the last take, and this is probably the hottest take, and this is the one that a lot of people are probably going to disagree with. Please know that this is just my opinion, and if you choose to do this, great, and I hope you get great value. But hotel points, by and large, are just not very valuable. They're just not. I mean, if you look at the redemption value on hotel points, sometimes people are thinking a great redemption is maybe 1 cent per point on some of the hotel currencies. Things like Marriott, things like Hilton, things like IHG. Now with Hyatt, sometimes you can do better. And so Hyatt in the past was definitely the exception to this rule. I've seen 5 and 6 cent per point values on Hyatt redemptions in the past, but they're changing their program too. And I think on average, it's probably going to be true with them in the future as well. But hotel points just aren't very valuable. They aren't. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't stay in hotels using your points. It's just that you've got to know the difference. You've got to understand that 5x Hilton points, or 500 Hilton points, if you want to put it that way, versus 500 points in any transferable program is not the same thing. They are not the same. And so that needs to be acknowledged and understood going forward. Doesn't mean you shouldn't use your points for hotels. It just means that if you want to be able to win and strategize correctly, you've got to know what those are worth. So is it worth it to transfer American Express 1 to 2 over to Hilton? Well, if Hilton's worth half a cent per point, and you may get better than that, but if it's worth half a cent per point, then you're getting 1 cent per point for your American Express points. Well, you can do better than 1 cent per point with airline partners, particularly all day long. And that doesn't mean don't do that. It means, though, you need to know what you're doing and you need to understand the dynamics of all of that. Well, those are my 6 truths that I think are sometimes overlooked or maybe just not understood in the points and miles world. I know people are going to disagree, and that's perfectly fine. And I think there are some valid alternative opinions. But these are things I wanted to share that hopefully will be helpful to all of you. Please, if you would, consider my channel memberships. I have a $2.99 tier called RM Insiders. You get early release videos. You also get special videos at least once a week just for channel members. Then I have a higher tier called Spreadsheet Warriors, and that is for true gamers. That's for people who are really playing this at a high level, wanting to kill it. And so in that, we talk at least once a month, sometimes twice a month by Zoom, and we have about a dozen Spreadsheet Warriors now, and we really are able to strategize with other people who are playing this game at the highest level. So consider that. Thank you for being here today. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and I will see you here next time.